All right, man, peace. So it seems as if many of the more prominent members of the liberal sports media are finally starting to figure out something that I've communicated to you brothers for a very long time. That being that the appropriate comparison for LeBron James is not Michael Jordan, it's actually Wilt Chamberlain. I actually put out a video on this sentiment about a month and a half ago. So now, of course, as usual, being slow as they normally are, the liberal sports media is catching on and they're making the same comparison. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Another finals loss won't be great news for LeBron, who's made it clear he's chasing Jordan's ghost. But, guys...
Well, no. What LeBron made very clear is that he's delusional because he has no chance of catching that quote-unquote ghost. But that was a very apropos comparison because a ghost is something that you can see but you can't touch.
But, guys, maybe LeBron and the rest of us have been comparing him to the wrong Hall of Famer this whole time. Because when you look at his finals record, are you ready for this? His career stacks up a lot more closely to Wilt Chamberlain.
Yes, it does stack up far more closely to Wilt Chamberlain. And it's because they were the same type of player. Physically dominant over their competition, but unable to come through in the big games when it mattered the most. Now, LeBron has been able to controvert that sentiment in the last 3 to 4 years due to his huge stat-padding games against the Golden State Warriors in the finals. But prior to that, when you look at his finals numbers, for the most part, they're not that impressive in light of how dominant he is physically. Wilt Chamberlain was very similar. He oftentimes will come up small in the biggest moments in the finals. But what made Wilt so special is that despite the fact that he often came up small when it mattered the most, he also happened to be on the two greatest teams in NBA history up until he retired. That being the Philadelphia team that he played on in the 66-67 season and the LA Laker team that he played on in the 71-72 season. Now, the Philadelphia team won 68 games, which was a record until Wilt's Laker team in the 71-72 season won 69 games. So it's just a very strange career that Wilt Chamberlain had that was notable predominantly for his overwhelming dominance physically, as well as his flameouts in pivotal games, like the flameout that he had in Game 7 in the 69 finals.
Then Michael Jordan's. Karan, are you ready for this? Is LeBron's legacy closer to Wilt or Mr. Jordan?
Well, I think it has a lot of similarities.
Yes.
Talking about the physical dominance and, his features and what he's been able to do in this era. Been second.
I've been saying that for the longest time. I don't know why it's taking these people so long to figure this out. LeBron James, to me, goes into the category alongside Wilt Chamberlain and Shaquille O'Neal as the most physically dominant players in their era, who should have won more championships than they won. And you could throw Dre West in there as well, just due to the numerous amount of finals that LeBron's going to participate in and be the loser. And in regards to Wilt Chamberlain, once again, unbelievably dominant player. People oftentimes forget him when it comes to consideration as the greatest players of all time. He still holds the most individual records in NBA history. But once again, he was often known for coming up small in big games. As I've already mentioned, Game 7 in 1969, he got a very strange injury. He had a very poor relationship with the head coach of the Lakers at that time. I'm trying to remember who it was. I believe it was Butch Van Breda Kolff. And Van Breda Kolff became so incensed by Wilt Chamberlain getting hurt. I believe he hurt his knee. That as Chamberlain was on the sideline trying to get some treatment and he claimed to be ready to go back in, Van Breda Kolff told him, no, we're just going to do it without you. Because I believe that Van Breda Kolff thought that Wilt Chamberlain was just a little bit too eccentric. He was a little bit too much of an attention seeker, even back then in his career. Now, of course, after his career, Wilt became known as a Renaissance man who was a race car driver, racquetball player, volleyball player, just someone who always wanted to be on the scene. And I believe that bothered Van Breda Kolff back during a time when it was not customary for notable players to seek out individual attention.
Second to none, but I think so many times in this space, right, we talk about guys that's present and current. So who is Steph Curry going to be compared to?
I think that Steph Curry, when all is said and done, is going to be compared stylistically to Pistol Pete Maravich, at least for those who actually understand how he played. He's not a normal quote-unquote point guard. He's not your average point guard. So it's going to be very difficult after Curry retires to place him appropriately. Of course, people are going to try to put him on the all-time point guard list, but he's not truly a point. He's more just a combo guard. Very similar to what Isaiah Thomas started to become near the end of the Pistons championship run, but not really, because Isaiah Thomas was still a pure point. But he would allow Joe Dumars to run the point. Sometimes Benny Johnson would run the point when he and Isaiah played together. It was pretty much predicated on who was hot at the time.
Going forward, LeBron dominated this era. He has 3 championships already. Steph Curry's on the verge of getting his 3rd. So his legacy would be compared to him as the next great. And I think LeBron should be compared to Kobe as, a guy that already got 5 and has done some magnificent things, instead of being compared to Michael and, further on. So that's where I stand with it.
He always working Kobe.
I just had to put that out there, man.
You guys are...
Yeah, that's good for Kobe that he has a friend like Caron Butler who continuously mentions him in comparison to LeBron James. So good for Kobe. He should call Caron up and take him out to dinner, because he's about the only person on TV who brings Kobe's name up, other than Kerry Champion.
You guys are boys.
Put that out there.
Right now, at this point, yeah, he's more like Wilt. I mean, if he's going to lose this finals, it'd be 3-6.
He will lose this finals. Unless something calamitous and catastrophic happens to the Golden State Warriors, LeBron James is going to lose this finals. That's how that goes. One great player is not going to beat a great team in a team game. And of course, many of LeBron James' more ardent super fans are going to say, well, see, how could you penalize LeBron for going against a great team? Newsflash, this has happened throughout NBA history. It's just that a lot of you ding-dongs who are super fans of LeBron James or any player don't place what is going on today in proper context. That's why I bring up Wilt Chamberlain. Because Wilt Chamberlain had to go against a super team every season in the Boston Celtics. And nobody looks back at his career records and says, well, we actually have to put Wilt at the #1 spot of all-time great NBA players because look at what he had to go against. And Wilt had a lot less options than LeBron does. Wilt couldn't say every 4 years, you know what, I'm just going to go to a different team where I can get more help. Now, near the end of his prime, he was sent over to the LA Lakers. And that team truly underachieved. They should have won more than they did. I'm trying to remember how many finals they lost. I know they lost in '69 to the Celtics in Bill Russell's last championship season and his last season period in his career. They lost in 1970 also in 7 games to the New York Knicks when Willis Reed got hurt and Clyde Frazier outplayed Jerry West in Game 7 in the Garden. And they were finally able to win in '72 when the Lakers broke the record for regular season wins, and then they lost in '73 again to the Knicks. So that team truly underwhelmed. They did not win as many as they should have.
Wilt's 2-4. That's the same exact percentage.
Win.
33%. Win.
When he loses.
Yeah, as I was going to say, he's going to lose. You're right, when he loses. Individually, LeBron's going to have all the records. I mean, most of the records.
It's amazing to me that people harp so much on so many of LeBron's records, which he should have in this day and age of performance enhancers, biochemical engineering, and I'm sure that many of his fans are going to get upset with me. I had a few brothers come in the comments and say, oh, well, Jordan was just a great athlete in an era where there were not any great athletes. It's amazing to me how the narratives change over the course of 20 years or so. Because anyone who watched that era knows that there were phenomenal athletes in the 80s and 90s. Athletes who would have been just as dominant today in regards to comparing them with the other top players or other top athletes in the NBA today. I mean, this is a league today where T.J. McConnell can get minutes. J.J. Barea is still in the NBA today. So don't tell me about how every person has a 40-inch vertical and can jump from the free throw line. As a matter of fact, how many players in the NBA today can go from the free throw line, like legitimately jump from the free throw line? I'm not even sure if Zach LaVine can do it anymore, coming off of the ACL tear. I would like to see Zach LaVine try to go from the free throw line right now, because I pretty much think that he's probably the only player in the NBA that can do it. Maybe Gerald Green, I'm not even sure. Gerald's more of a vertical leaper than a horizontal one. Back in the Jordan era, of course, he can go from the free throw line. And you had other players who did it. Barea did it. There were great athletes. There have been great athletes in the NBA in every era. As a matter of fact, the greatest athlete in NBA history, who was also a great player, was Wilt Chamberlain. It was not LeBron James. LeBron is really a genetic anomaly. I give him all types of credit for the things that he can do. But just for example, when we look at the screen here, right to the left of LeBron James is the great Bill Russell, who is probably the most maligned all-time great player in NBA history. In my view, the most overrated all-time great player is Kobe Bryant, and the most underrated is Bill Russell. This is a player who won 11 championships in 13 seasons. And just for me, I concoct a little formula in regards to Bill Russell so that I can evaluate him in comparison to the great players of the modern era. So I look at the 11 championships that he won in the 60s, late 50s into the 60s, and I say to myself, well, due to the fact that the talent pool was so small, and you also had the ABA, some of his championships are diluted. There's no doubt about that. So even if I chop the impact of his championships in half, he still has 5.5 championships. So that's why I have him number 3, behind Michael Jordan and Kareem. But once again, you can still make the case that he's the greatest player in NBA history. The Celtics never won a championship until he got there, and they did not win another one for 5 years after he left. And people really don't realize how great a player he was. He was like Kevin Garnett's intensity, Dennis Rodman's rebounding and defense, and Tim Duncan's leadership all rolled into one. So you have to give that man some credit. I think that people's arguments become more valid when they show that they actually have knowledge of the history of the enterprises that they're trying to appraise. Meaning what? You can say that Shaq is the most dominant player in NBA history, but once I see that you have no understanding of Wilt Chamberlain's contributions to the game, then whatever else you say is going to be invalid to me. It's just my view. When I say that Michael Jordan should be ranked number 1 as the all-time greatest NBA player, it's in light of the information that I have on Bill Russell and Kareem and Magic, so on and so forth, and giving them their just due. We just can't nullify the greatness of other players by saying, well, that was back in the 70s, or that was back then, or that was back here, or that was back there. Go look up Bill Russell jumping from the free throw line. There was a play where Bill Russell, and it's in black and white, it's very grainy, but when you see the long jump that he executed, and this is on a fast break during an NBA game, you can see what type of a transcendent athlete Bill Russell was. He also was a phenomenal track and field athlete, just like Wilt Chamberlain.
Individually in the playoffs and regular season, Wilt has had statistics that nobody will ever break. And here's the thing, they're both so physically dominant.
You know, people love talking about the Jordan cry face meme. Someone should have did a meme about LeBron James's face when he won those 2013 finals, because right now I'm starting to think maybe Bill Cosby's his dad. Who the hell knows? Man looked like he just had some sour jello pudding.
That they tend to do everything. Like Wilt, 50 points a game, 25 rebounds a game, was an assist guy as well when he wanted to. He did everything, and everything on his team ran through him. Same as LeBron. LeBron becomes the system wherever he goes.
There you go. Did you hear what Mr. Chris Broussard just said? A lot of these pundits are finally starting to figure out what I've been telling you brothers for the longest time, man. Everywhere that LeBron James goes, they have to run the LeBron James system. That's it. That is the only system that he can run. So this nonsense about LeBron playing for Greg Popovich, all that shit is for show. This contention that many of LeBron's more ardent fans have that he never played under a great coach, because he can't. LeBron doesn't want to play under a great coach. He believes that his system is the only way that he should win, and it's the only way that he can win. He does not want to go anywhere where the coach outshines him, where the coach is more woke than him. Can you imagine LeBron and Greg Popovich in a press conference? They're going to be battling for airtime to see who could say more inflammatory things about Donald Trump.
That's great. It makes your team really good. But when you face a team that plays together and moves the ball and is skilled, like San Antonio in 14, like Golden State now, one man, no matter how good you are, can't beat that.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. And that has always been LeBron's kryptonite. I've mentioned that in another video. I believe the Brad Stevens video. That's why the Celtics almost beat LeBron without any of their great players. If they'd had Kyrie, they would have won that series probably in 5. And that would have been very embarrassing for LeBron James. But no, he's unable to beat a team that has great team basketball IQ. He's a basketball genius in and of himself, but his hubris holds him back from fully embracing a lot of the more ancillary aspects of basketball acumen. He's so focused on making sure that he glorifies himself that he leaves a lot of other important aspects of the game out, not because he's ignorant of them, but just because he prefers to not have to embrace them, because he believes that it may take away from his overall shine.
And Wilt ran up against it, and LeBron's run up against it.
Well, I think LeBron's is in the category zone, just like MJ. MJ's in the category zone. I never really, honestly, never expect anybody to pass MJ. You know,
Nor do I, because Michael Jordan, once again, I mentioned this in other videos, he's a Mount Rushmore athlete. He's not even a Mount Rushmore NBA player. What do I mean by Mount Rushmore athlete? His preeminence and his greatness is not even defined by stats. It's just defined by perception. It's defined by just this ethereal aspect that he has as a performer. And you'll notice this amongst Mount Rushmore athletes in other sports, like Jim Brown or Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali does not have the most victories in boxing history. He's not undefeated. He doesn't have the most knockouts. But when people think the greatest ever in boxing, they think Muhammad Ali, even though he was not the greatest fighter ever. It's the same thing with Michael Jordan. He's transcended this conversation about whether or not he's the greatest basketball player ever. LeBron is never going to be on that Mount Rushmore of athletes in regards to him being perceived as someone who can transcend what he actually did on the basketball floor. He's always going to be evaluated by stats, and he understands that. That's why he pads them.
Just in my mind, MJ's is a different category, and LeBron is too. We've never seen a guy like LeBron. Let's be honest. What player have we seen that's even close to LeBron? None. So I just put him in his own category, and I look at it like this. They're all great. This is greatness we're watching. Just let them all be great.
To further your point, Broussard, you know, Wilt Chamberlain was 1-7 against the Celtics in the playoffs back in the day. Now we're seeing LeBron go up against the Warriors. He's about to be 1-3. And Karan, I really...
And isn't it interesting that when the Philadelphia 76ers were finally able to overcome the Boston Celtics, or the Philadelphia Warriors, whatever the team was known as, when Wilt finally got over the hump, it was because he led the league in assists. He actually stopped trying to dominate the ball, and he allowed his other teammates to be great.
I really liked your comparison. Like, listen, we've seen some Jordan wannabes, right? Like, Kobe kind of wanted to study Jordan closely. Vince Carter as well. Really.
Even though, strangely enough, Kobe Bryant still tries to perpetuate this nonsense about how his favorite player growing up was Magic Johnson. Isn't that something?
Studied Jordan closely. We're never going to see a LeBron.
Never.
You're just not going to. The guy's got the body of Karl Malone, the speed of John Wall. You're just not going to see that. It's like it's...
That's so interesting. People always say that we'll never see another. Yes, you will. As a matter of fact, he's already in the league. His name is Ben Simmons. Now, will he ever put up the numbers that LeBron puts up? No. Because he's really not that type of player. Ben Simmons is not someone who's going to be concerned with averaging 28 a game, 8 assists, and 8 rebounds. He has more Magic Johnson DNA in him, Ben Simmons does. But he has the size and the potential for physical bodily growth of a LeBron James, especially if he can hire that biochemist.
It's like it's made in a lab or something.
I think...
Ding. Maybe it was made in a lab. Maybe it was made in a lab, sir. Who knows? Maybe LeBron James is the product of genetic engineering. I told you guys in the video that I did on LeBron and his biochemist that he reminds me of that movie that Jean-Claude Van Damme did many, many years ago. I believe it was called Universal Soldier. I think it was Jean-Claude that was in that. Now, I know for a fact that Kurt Russell did another Universal Soldier film, which is basically about, of course, soldiers who were put under genetic modification. Who knows?
I think we have to really, like Jack said, you know, we have to appreciate what we're witnessing. You know, and I thought the phrase and the slogan was great. You know, he's the guy that came in with the most expectations. And, you know, he's excelled and exceeded all expectations.
Every last one of them.
Yes, he has. I will definitely give LeBron James that. All the expectations that he had for his career, he's been able to supersede them.
Everyone, and I'm most proud just as a guy that's viewing the game and have played the game, but what he's done on the other side.
Yeah.
Off
They did yesterday.
Yeah. So, Broussard, the one thing I want to push back on, and I don't want to anger anybody, but listen, people only want to compare LeBron to Jordan. I don't think we're denigrating LeBron by comparing him to Wilt Chamberlain, who is an all-time great.
Not only are you not denigrating LeBron, you're actually giving him a great compliment, because Wilt Chamberlain is an all-time great player, and he is the greatest athlete to ever play in the NBA. And it's much more suitable to compare LeBron James to Wilt.
Like you said, 50,
People have
25.
thought Wilt was the best player of all time.
Yeah.
Up until probably Jordan or Kareem, people said it was Wilt.
So anytime people, you reference LeBron to anybody other than Jordan, the social media crowd goes nuts. But I actually like this comparison a lot. I think, what they went up against, again, the Celtics for Wilt and now the Warriors for LeBron, I think there's a good comparison.
If LeBron doesn't win any more championships, Wilt will be the more appropriate comparison probably. But depending on where he goes or what happens, like you said, he's got 5-6 years left. What if he ends up with 5 or 6 rings? Then Jordan is far more of a comparison than Wilt.
So we spent a lot of time behind the scenes. Wilt's iconic photo where he's holding up the sign, I scored 100 points. We were trying to think, how do you do it for LeBron? And, what sign would LeBron hold up? And we thought keeping it 100 for LeBron James. You like that?
That's dope. I like
It should be I play for 100 teams.
the 20K.
All right,
That's my favorite stat. I got that 20K.
Let's move on.
So, of course, when Steven Jackson states that the real stat from Wilt Chamberlain that he loves is the 20K, he's talking about Wilt Chamberlain's allegations that he slept with 20,000 women. Now, Wilt kind of tried to reel that back years after he put that in one of his biographical books, but I'm sure the number is somewhere close to that, because Wilt Chamberlain was doing his thing. It is what it is. At the end of the day, the most important thing to realize in regards to the LeBron James comparisons to any of the great players is that it is a great compliment to LeBron to be compared with many of the greats that came before him, especially players who, quite frankly, accomplished more with less. They did not have the ability to jump from team to team back then as he does today. He should feel very fortunate that he can do so, because he could easily be one of those guys who never won. That's another reason why I have to place Jordan number 1. He was able to win 6 titles, never went anywhere. But anyway, it is what it is. But it is good to see the media finally starting to wise up in regards to who LeBron James actually is. He's an all-time great. But to be compared to Jordan, no. Peace.